I went vegan about 7 years ago. I don't know my vegan bursary. It just happened organically. And for the longest time, I felt very, you know, I don't want to be one of those angry, like those vegans who are just out there yelling at people. And then, hey, here we are. That's how change is made, is to really get people to see what are people angry about. And I started learning a lot about so many other social justice movements, like the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, and how a lot of their tactics and strategies were not strictly, playing nice, and how we can get the scale of change that we really want to see when we come from a systemic approach. And what works when we're coming from a systemic approach is being really, really, really annoying to these large corporations and, disrupting their daily routine, not getting in the way of their customers having a pleasant experience. And, if they'll, if they really care about keeping their business running, they'll be like, all right, what is it going to take to get these people to go away? And often it also gets some people of the public curious, it's like, what are they yelling about? And, sometimes people join us, and sometimes, of course, there are going to be people who are annoyed and they have that privilege to not worry about certain things. But we also, as animal rights activists, not all of us have the privilege to worry about the oppression of another being, but some of us do. And some of us do put ourselves on the line, putting our bodies and our own freedom on the line to fight for these animals. And there are just so many ways to do that. And I found disruptions to be a very, at first, scary, but also a very empowering experience. And I will say that as far as activism goes, I'm relatively new to being more vocal and more active. I was always like, hey, I'm just going to be one of those people who, and that's fine if, going out into a street and protesting is not your thing and you're just enjoying, just showing people that vegan food tastes good, that's fine. And that's who I was for the longest time. But I think another reason why I felt very comfortable there was because I didn't have that support of activists who are doing these on the ground actions, and being connected with folks who do that and actually experiencing and participating in these events was so empowering. And I felt, and of course, there's a lot to be said about having a safe space to do it with, to be with a group of activists who have got your back. And so as someone relatively new to disruptions, I've only done 2, I will say, and both of them have been over like the past few months. And my very first one was at Jonathan Adler, and they are a very high-end furniture store. And they are, and so the GF Capital, they're the parent investor who invests in Jonathan Adler, but they also invest in Oscar de la Renta, who was a target of an anti-fur campaign. And so what we did was a form of secondary targeting. So going after another secondary or tertiary targeting, going after a business that they're not selling fur, but we are being a nuisance to them and, pressuring them to, hey, call your boss. And that was one of the most, that chant was so exciting, to just be there with the megaphones and yelling in, call your boss. And that was just so cool. And so that's a way of getting them to call their investors, being like, hey, you got to get your other people in your investment portfolio to drop fur, because these activists are ruining our business. And so that was a very, very fun disruption to participate in. And also, we don't, it was a really small store. So it's like, and they're like a group of so many people just barging into their stores with sirens and banners and posters. And at first I will say I was pretty nervous, because I'd never done anything like that before. And we had, instructions to not touch anything, not knock anything down. And that's a very expensive and a very small store, and there's so many of us. So I was really nervous about accidentally, knocking something over and getting arrested and all that. So those are things that really went through my mind. But I felt safe knowing that I was surrounded by uh, people that I really, really trusted. Um, and so that was my first that was my first demo, my first disruption. And my second one was at Starbucks to get them to, and we went to the really fancy Starbucks Reserve in Chicago and did disruptions like first we just did a sit-in holding signs about the dairy industry and to get people to either one, get Starbucks to drop the plant milk upcharge, and also to encourage people to stop paying or to stop opting for the default cow's breast milk. And so we did that so we were just doing a sit-in on every floor, and then we disrupted. We went up and down and up and down and just chanting. And that was, and I had the honor of giving a speak out there, which was super, super, I really love giving, I realized that I wasn't shy to give a speak out. Like I felt I was already in that empowered state and that very like, yeah, we got this. And I knew that I knew the science about the dairy. I knew, and I felt very comfortable in the topic, comfortable enough to give a speak out and really bring in the logic. Like, why would you consume the lactation secretions of another species when you wouldn't even consider drinking a coffee with human breast milk? Like, that doesn't make sense. And so also walking through that, and during the speak out, tying in that I consumed animal dairy as well, and so making that personable. So for me, I figured what work is, while being disruptive, the disruption angle was we're going after the corporation, and the personal connection angle was my way of connecting to the customers who can maybe see themselves in what it is that we're trying to say. So because for me, I'm very passionate about both systemic and a bottom-up approach for a more sustainable change, because I think, yes, the corporations, if they change their ways, that's going to go a humongous way to bring the scale of change. But I also feel what's going to be sustainable is for people, the customers, the behavioral change angle as well. So I really want to tie both in. And I found that that during disruptions, that is, one might not think that could be an opportunity to get people to, confront behavioral change, because, our main focus is to get the company to do something that we're asking. But I think it also gets a lot of people to, people who are open-minded enough to have good conversation and not just troll activists just for the sake of it, or say something in passing, or say something that they wouldn't say to our faces right in front. Like, some people just feel like they can say something in passing and walk by. But I also find that this is a very interesting, empowering, and effective way, because, hey, if people want to have a pleasant experience, businesses don't want customers being, feeling like they're being harassed, or not having a pleasant shopping ordeal or whatnot. So yeah, that's my experience as a very, I would call myself in the freshman stages of a disruption, but the two that I did, I definitely really enjoyed. And I'm looking forward to, it's a weird thing to say, I'm looking forward to doing more disruptions, because that means there are systems in place that require disrupting. But I'm really glad that I have a group of people who I can trust to fight the good fight with. So yeah, that's my little spiel. I will pass it back to Michelle. I hope I didn't take too much time, or I'm good on time, or too less time.
Thank you, Shriya. That was perfect. Thank you for giving your perspective on disruptions, especially as a newbie, so to speak, but still with such a lot of valid experience to offer. Okay, up next is our guest speaker, Devin Kelly from Revolution Philadelphia. Devin, if you're ready, take it away.
Hey everyone, thank you, Michelle, and thank you AAM for having me on here tonight. My name is Devin, and I am an organizer with Revolution Philadelphia. I have been vegan for 4 years, and I've been an activist for about that long. And I think if my fellow activists and organizers could describe me, and I've heard them even say it, and my favorite form of activism, they would 100% say I love to disrupt. So I am excited to talk to you guys tonight. This is one of my, as I've already said, favorite forms of activism. To me, disruptions are not only effective, which we all know, I think that they are absolutely necessary. Sometimes disruptions get a bad rap because, and I understand that they're not for everyone, but I have done all different forms of activism. I think every form has its place, but I think disruptions are so important. So just quickly, my experience with disruptions, I started out doing a lot of grocery store disruptions with Revolution Philadelphia. I think that they are great because it gives us an opportunity to tell the consumer who might not already be thinking about it, who they are eating, not what they are eating. Just a quick tip for grocery store disruptions. My favorite time to do them is right before a holiday. So right before like Christmas or Thanksgiving, like the day or two before when everybody is there shopping, it's a great opportunity to go and let consumers know who they're going to be eating, at their holiday table. We've always had really great responses. You plant seeds while people are literally doing their holiday shopping for the meal that they're going to probably host 10 people of the next day. So great opportunity there. Revolution Philadelphia last year joined in with the nationwide anti-fur campaign. So for the past year, et cetera, we've been really focusing our efforts when it comes to disruptions on these big designers that, obviously we're trying to get them to drop fur. So if you've been following, Saks and Neiman Marcus and Canada Goose, there's YSL recently, a lot of designers have dropped fur. So we've really been focusing our disruptive efforts towards that. With Revolution Philadelphia, I've done a lot of Saks disruptions. Basically everyone I just mentioned, I had the honor. This was really exciting for me. Rachel out of New York actually asked me to disrupt their headquarters with them, Saks headquarters. That was really exciting for me just because, everybody knows New York and, their history with fur and anti-fur. So that was really awesome. And then we've done like phone blasts and email blasts, and that's another really effective way to disrupt a business. So that's my experience. I love to go into stores. I love my bullhorn. I love to make noise. I love to make people listen to us. I think we have such an important message, and I think disruptions are one of the best, if not best ways to get that message across. So why do I think that they work? Or why do I know that they work? I mean, CEOs care about profit. So at the end of the day, when a large group of loud activists are going inside of a store repeatedly, that messes up profit for them. Employees are complaining. They might be getting customer complaints. We've seen many times where there's so many activists outside and they have to close their doors down while we're there. That's amazing. So all those things disrupt, their profit for them, and CEOs don't want that. So the point of disruptions really at the end of the day, when you're doing it like, against fur, if you're going into a designer and you want them to drop fur, we want the CEO to get a phone call, right? So it's a good thing. So the more disruptive you can be, the better. And as I always say, pressure bursts pipes, and it really just comes down to CEOs don't want that kind of heat and attention on their businesses. They just want to be able to go day to day, not be getting calls and complaints and emails and bad reviews. So the more, you can disrupt their business, the better. And that's why they work. I mean, we've seen in history, change does not come about by staying silent and by, complying. There comes a time where you just need to make noise. And we've seen this happen over and over, and we've seen it be effective. So super important for us as activists to get out there for the animals and do the same. And then lastly, I've done a ton of disruptions, and I just wanted to share some tips, whether you're planning a disruption or you're attending a disruption. I'll probably miss some important things, but these are some of the top tips that I thought, if I was new, when I was new, what I wish somebody would have told me, and the things that I was learning from experienced activists, that I was following. So first off, if you're planning a disruption, I always recommend what we do in Philly is we always go and scope out the store that we're going to be disrupting beforehand, like as a shopper. So we always know where our entry is, where is our exit. You always want to know if there's going to be a security guard at the door or not, because that's going to be able to, you want to know if you could just go right in the store, if you kind of need to go in as like a secret shopper. Being prepared in that sense is going to make it go a lot smoother. Have a meeting point that's not the store. So we always make sure our activists meet somewhere like around the corner. That way we can briefly go over what it's going to be like when we get there. And that way we have a quick escape and we know where we're going afterwards, because a lot of times security's chasing you down, or the cops might even be on their way. So you definitely want to get out as quickly as possible. For us, we love to just do it in a group. I've seen disruptions where it's 1 or 2 people. I think any form of disruption is great, do it. But we like to have more if we can get it. The more the merrier. So gather your group, decide if you're going to walk right in the front door. So if there's no security, you can just walk right in if that's what you choose. Sometimes we like to have our activists go in as shoppers, when they have a sign in their bag. And I'm going to show you a video where we did that at Neiman Marcus. That way everybody's already in the store has no idea, and then you kind of just surprise them and you do your thing. We love doing that. Make sure someone's filming. Always make sure that one of your activists or a photographer or somebody is filming it and taking photos. So you want that documentation. That's super important. Make sure you have signs, banners, noisemakers, whistles, bullhorns especially. The whole point of doing a disruption is to be disruptive. You want the CEO to get a phone call. You want them to know that you're there, and you want them to know that you keep coming back. So this is not the time to be feeling bad for the shoppers that have to cover their ears and their shopping experience is now ruined. This is not the time to feel bad for the innocent employees. Yeah, we're not there for them. I get that all the time. Well, those people are innocent. You guys are just going in and ruining someone's day. That's the point. And those people are going to be okay. So don't worry about them. A couple minutes of having to cover your ears, or, maybe your shopping experience was ruined. The bottom line is it's worth it. So make as much noise as possible and make sure everybody sees you. Everybody sees you and knows you're there and hears your message loud and clear. One thing I get asked, or we get asked a lot, will I get arrested? I don't want to go into that too much. I usually tell my activists, we will leave when we're asked to leave, but we're going to take our time and we're going to do it very loudly. So what I found, at least with our experience, is as long as you don't refuse to leave the store, which would be like a sit-in anyway, which usually does end in arrest, but that's a different kind of disruption. As long as you leave when you're asked to leave, but you do it slowly, you make sure you finish the speak out, you leave chanting, I have found that you're not likely to get arrested as long as you're not refusing to leave. So a tip would be, don't refuse to leave, just leave very loudly and very slowly. And then know your rights, that's always a big one. One thing we come into contact a lot, security guards and store managers, they want to get up on you and put their hands on you, or, just get too close. One big thing I always tell our activists is they are not allowed to touch you. So that is assault. So just knowing your rights before you go into the door, that way, if you do run into any situation like that, you know how the law protects you. It actually makes you feel a lot more confident to know those things. And then lastly, I do a lot of speak outs. So I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but my one tip would be that if you are the one doing the speak out, I personally always write them ahead of time. I've given plenty of impromptu speak outs just because you know, we're all passionate. We know the facts, so it's not really hard to do. But what I found is that when you have managers in your face and your security guards in your face and they're telling you to get out of their store, it can be very distracting no matter how experienced you are. So it's helpful to me that I have something written in my mind that I've gone over. I might not say it exactly the way I wrote it. I might, you know, forget some parts, but it's nice to have that in the back of my mind. That way I don't get tripped up so easily, you know, when somebody's in my face telling me to get out of their store. So those would be my tips for anybody that's planning a disruption or maybe attending one for the first time. Don't be nervous. You'll likely leave there so pumped up that you're going to want to go disrupt every store. It's really awesome, and it's a really great way to plant seeds. So I'm going to show quickly. Actually, it's like 3 minutes, but I'll fast forward through some of it. Just one of our disruptions. This is a Neiman Marcus disruption that we did this past year. We had a large group. We sent people in as shoppers. So we had about 20 people in the store already. Just the store had no idea. And then us organizers walked in with our sirens blazing and everybody pulled their signs out. And it was a really awesome disruption. And then it's in a busy mall. So then we protested it, you know, right out front of the store in the mall until the cops were on their way. So we do like to take our time, but we always leave, like I said, once we know that the cops are going to be, you know, heading our way. So I'm just going to show that. And if Michelle or somebody can tell me if it's not working. One second.
Hear it.
Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So thanks for, hopefully that wasn't too boring there, but I just kind of wanted to give an example. I think it kind of, that's a good video to show a lot of the things that I talked about. You never really know how a disruption is going to go. Sometimes you run into things that you didn't plan for, and that's okay. But just my biggest tip, I guess, would be to just be as prepared as you can be. Go with activists in a group that you trust and just get it done, because it's a great way to get things done for the animals. Michelle, thanks for having me, and I'm done.
Thank you, Devin, so much. That video was really powerful. I just wanted to chant along. I had a hard time not chanting along with that, and it was such a great illustration of what you're talking about. You gave some amazing tips and very inspirational. Devin's going to, of course, stick around. I know there's some questions coming in, so continue to feel free to put questions in the chat for Devin and for our other panelists. And also, Devin, if you could put your social information in the chat as well. For Revolution Philadelphia, everyone needs to follow Devin and Revolution Philadelphia so you can see their many, many powerful actions. So next up, in terms of our speakers, is another AAM mentor, Dana. So Dana, if you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So hello, I'm Dana. I live in Atlanta. I've been vegan for almost 9 years, but I've only been involved with activism for about 2.5 years. And I really, really love doing disruptions. And I feel like the way to get better at something is just to do it. When I first started doing disruptions, they were not very good, but anyway, they've evolved over time. So I wrote a couple things down I wanted to share with you guys. So first off, I just say, like, know your rights where you are specifically. From what I've experienced, most places have similar laws within the United States, but if anybody on that, please feel free to post that. I just check for peace of mind. And I always keep like a list of places in my phone for disruptions with specific addresses. So I know like the first stores that are around me, things that are ongoing. Like I know CAF does a lot of pressure campaigns, which I think is really, really smart. So there's people all over that'll do these campaigns, and they've gotten so much stuff successfully dropped. So I really like being involved with that, because if you're just doing something at a store and it's just, you know, once in a while, it's not going to have as big of an impact. But if people are doing that all over, I think that's so smart. So before I do it, I do like to prepare. I make sure to know at least like a few pertinent facts about the store or place you're doing the disruption at. And I personally make the speak out usually last between 2 and 3 minutes. I think it's good to have key points and then get them across quickly. Also, if you're doing it with other people and are going to use chants, go over it with them, because some people just say things differently. There's different variations of chants. So you want to make sure you guys are all on the same page. I know I've definitely yelled out like chants before that people are looking at me weird. But if for the disruption, you really want that to be organized. So I usually have a few good ones ready. Another thing I've learned with doing them, I used to have like so many chants, and some of them really wouldn't be that specific. And I've realized I feel like it's good to kind of narrow it down and get the best ones for that store, because the disruptions are not usually very long. So I personally like walk in and I'll do the speak out, and then we'll do the chants. And, you know, like I said, I've realized some things over time and have improved. And even when I first started doing things, I felt like my disruptions were pretty bad, but I still put them online because I was like, it's still up there. Honestly, I feel like you kind of have to let go of who cares really what people think about you, because what you're doing is right. And I still don't feel like my disruptions are always that great, but they've gotten better. And I love doing them. Honestly, they're like one of my favorite forms of activism. So when you're doing the disruption, I personally would not post on social media about it. You can use word of mouth. So I'll wait till we have an event and I'll talk to some activists face to face, just because you don't want, you know, a trail behind you. And I'll talk to people about it on Signal as well, but I don't want to leave, any evidence like that. So what else was I say? Yeah. Also, I wouldn't talk about the event to anyone unless they're attending. You know, keep it private. You want it, what is going on, to be super undercover. You don't want to talk about it a lot. I mean, I would just talk about it to activists that are doing it. So when I first started doing them, I would actually always carry like a little piece of paper with keywords or pertinent things to say on it. I don't always carry one now, but sometimes I do. I sometimes forget things or get tongue tied. So I'll carry like a super tiny page of keywords. You can do that just to make yourself comfortable. I mean, some people literally like will pick up their phone and read things off their phone. I think it's better to try to know what you're saying, but you know, practice makes perfect. So the more you do it, the better you'll get. I feel like I've improved every single time I've done one. I usually, like if I usually will print something out if I'm going to print it with like a 4-page format and just print on like a fourth of the page, something really tiny. And something AV said a long time ago that I think it was like a term coined by the Navy or something, but they said like KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I think that's important too, because I know I personally like think of all of these little details, and that's not how a disruption should be. It's like to the point. You want to let people know it's not going to last that long. So you want to get the most important information out there. So I personally do like to try to memorize or at least know key points. You don't need to know it for word at all, but at least know loosely what you're going to say and find what works for you. Also, I think it helps to, you can practice in front of the mirror. You can say it out loud. I always say it out loud a lot of times, and I didn't used to do that before, but sometimes I'll write something down, like thinking of what I'm going to say, and then I say it out loud and I don't like how it sounds. So it's easy for me to fix right then. And I used to not do that. So that's something I realized over time. And when you go, honestly, if I'm doing disruptions, I would leave my phone in the car. I've been told if you leave your phone in the trunk or a locked glove box, that's best because it's harder for the cops to get into. But if you do go and bring your phone, okay, but make sure your phone has a good password, because from what I have read, cops can legally go through your phone if you don't have a password on it. And then if there is, they do need a warrant, but also from what I understand, it's easy for them to do. So I would not bring that with you unless you had to. I think appearance gives you more credibility off the bat. So I think when you're doing a disruption, you want to try to like look nice. This is going to be broadcast to a lot of people. You don't want to look like a bum or anything like that. And, definitely don't have any, you could have animal rights clothes, but if you're trying to go in and be discreet, don't have animal rights clothes. If other people are going with you, go in the store quickly, or, like was mentioned before, having them go before you, that's wonderful. We did a disruption at YSL before they stopped carrying fur. And that was actually the first disruption I'd done where we had to wait in a line. But it was only me and 2 other people, but we didn't all act like we knew each other, and we went in separately. Another thing is when you walk into a store, make sure you do not run into anyone or break anything. I know they can press charges for that. I haven't had anything bad personally happen with that, but I've witnessed something happen. I was videoing for somebody that was doing a disruption, and he ran into somebody. And after the disruption, the police took him away. And they did release him eventually, but that's only because he bumped into a girl that works in the store when he was going in. I didn't even notice it happen because it happened so quickly, but She could have pressed charges on him and she didn't, which was very lucky in my opinion. But I mean, people's adrenaline's rushing. Don't knock anything over and break it. You be careful about that. So I usually, when I'm doing them, I usually go in and go to the back of the store because then I have farther to get out, far away from the door. And then I'll just start speaking as loudly and clearly as I can. And I know some people do use megaphones, and I know Shannon and Evan have that like little, not electric megaphone, but just a handheld one. I thought that's a good idea too. And some people do use them. I don't use them. I just try to scream pretty loud, but you can totally. I guess it just depends where you are. But I feel like you can try anything and see what happens. So, yeah, I usually, and when I go in and when I start doing disruptions, I kind of space out because security will be up in your face. I just try to not listen to anything and just say what I'm going to say. You're going to be told to leave immediately. If you don't leave, if you refuse to leave, you'll possibly get arrested, but you can definitely make your way out slowly. So what I do is I go in, I go to the back, I start chanting and stuff. There's lots of security around and, you know, cops come too, but I'll weave around and slowly get out. So it's a very low risk if you leave in a reasonable period. Even if cops show up, they'll usually give you a chance to leave the store. And I personally haven't had any problems. If somebody touches you, they're not allowed to touch you. Say, don't touch me, that's assault. And you definitely want to always have someone assigned to film, especially if you're the one talking. This is incredibly important. Make sure they film everything. I know Shannon has asked for cops' badge numbers. I think that's smart, but you know, film everything, film the person talking. You want to have interactions filmed so that your butt's covered, honestly. And you could have a body camera too or something. I don't have one, but I want to get one soon. So if police, well, no. If you speak with a cop, basically, there's a few things you need to say. So the only things you ever need to say to a cop are you don't need to give your name or ID also unless you're being detained. So when they come in, you can ask, am I being detained? What am I being detained for if you are? And then if you were being detained, you have to give them your ID. But if not, you say, am I free to go? If you're under arrest, you say, I like to remain silent. I want an attorney. I do not consent to a search. Even if a search is already in progress, because the cops are allowed and trained to lie to you. They want to put you in a situation that gets you to incriminate yourself and others. So if I know people have been arrested for things and gone to jail and just stayed silent and had to be released because they don't have any information on them. So there's nothing wrong with not talking. You shouldn't talk. So once I do the disruption too, you know, somebody films it, I'll have them send it to me. I have Facebook and Instagram, so I'll put it on my face, but in my Facebook and my Instagram, I make sure to use hashtags, and I'll tag the specific relevant targets that I am doing the campaigning against. So Instagram, I know lets you do 30, and I'll use them all. And on Facebook, I'll just use a few that are the most important. And I have some lists on my phone just of different things, honestly, that I can easily copy paste from. So it's not anything hard at all. And another thing I do is I'll post and share in almost all the vegan groups around me as well, which some of them probably think is annoying, but I don't care. I'll still try. So I personally also think it's good to watch yourself recorded. I know when I'm recorded, I say a lot, and I still do that. So watch, and you can, make a note to self to improve that. Maybe you don't realize you do something. I also used to weave like that. It's just nervous habit. Don't do that. I mean, you can learn and figure out what you do. So, and I would also be open to suggestions. People are trying to help you. If anybody has any suggestions, it's always great. let's see. So yeah, so just let everybody know too that's doing it. There's always a possibility of arrest. It's very unlikely, but it's definitely possible. Maybe a cop's being a jerk that day, or you can be wrongfully arrested. So some additional resources that I thought were good. CAFTUSA.org has a article on security culture, which is really good and gives you a lot of good tips. And this is actually something that I heard about in a previous meeting from here, but DXC/IO/resource library. And I'll just be honest, I haven't looked at all of it yet, but they have a lot of information about like police investigation strategies, etc. So yeah, that's just my experience. I've done them at like Saks, Alice and Olivia, farmers markets, Publix, Neiman Marcus, Starbucks, YSL, so Anthropology, but there's a lot of good ones. So just go for it. That's all. Thank you.
Wow, Dana, that was so good. That was so chock full of, like, you gave like all the practical tips that are just like so super important. And Dana, before I forget, put if you want, your Facebook and your Instagram handles in the chat. So I know folks are gonna, after this, want to follow you as well. And some of the things that Dana said, I just have to repeat. I love what she said about providing the chance for people in advance, so they know the chance, of course, in advance. Not communicating on Facebook necessarily, keeping the communication private. Leaving your mobile phone in the car. These are just, try not to break anything, right? Get in and out as quickly as possible. The cops are not allowed to touch you, and record everything. Record everything to document. Those are just, those things bear repeating over and over, even if we know that. So thank you for what you just offered, and Dana's going to stick around for questions. Next up, we have mentor Shannon Blair and her son, vegan Evan, super activist. Go ahead and take it away, you guys.
Hi, everybody. You already met Evan. I'm Shannon. I am a certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator. I am a mentor for AAM. Really proud to be vegan Evan's mom. And this Thanksgiving marks 25 years since I've been an animal. I started doing activism in the 90s, and after going vegan and learning more information, it's obviously, I realized it had to all be accelerated. And I'm just like Evan, disruptions are probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, forms of activism. And so I just everybody's covered everything so well so far. So a couple of things I say might be a little repetitive. I always like, Dana just said it, but I always like to reiterate the don't touch me, that's assault, and the filming can be so powerful. I've been assaulted more times than I can count. For whatever reason, it is by men, almost 99% of the time. But the second that I say that sternly, and I mean, like, don't touch me, that's assault, and then get filming if it's not already. If I don't have the camera, I'll say, get the camera over here. And that will really deter the situation from getting worse the majority of the time. And another thing that we started doing a long time ago that seems to really help is, at the beginning, we start off by saying that we come with a message of peace, compassion, and nonviolence towards all. And, some people like to use the megaphones, some don't. Personally, I find that I'm much better off with some type of amplification device because my message is more clear and I don't end up getting in screaming matches with people. People can't really compete with me too well anyway, even without a megaphone, but with it, I don't have to scream. So I can speak loudly, and then I scream if I want to, and I'm even louder. So it works out really well. Dana mentioned the headsets. They're also made by Pile, our favorite brand for megaphones. And they're like, I think 40 watts instead of our big megs are 50. And they work really well, especially if you're trying to be more discreet. you can hide them much more easily than a megaphone. But a megaphone can be hidden too sometimes in the right shopping bag, or if you have like a 30-watt one that's smaller, they work well. My first disruptions, our first disruptions were in Washington, D.C. during one of the animal rights national conferences. And Evan was the one who really, really wanted to do it. We had done a march to the White House. That was Evan's first time visiting the White House, and it was a march for animals. And afterwards, a group of people, our friend Arwen, who we didn't know at the time, everybody was like, oh, who wants to do a disruption? DXC people were in town, and they got everybody hyped up. And so my mom was also with us. My mom and I were both like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Our main concern was bringing Evan in, and he was adamant about going. So I just looked around, and I looked at like the person that looked the friendliest, nicest, happened to be Arwen. As some of you might know Arwen Carlin. She's an amazing activist. And I said, excuse me, do you think it's okay for me to bring my son in? Evan was like, I think 6 or 7 at the time. And she looked at me and she smiled and she said, absolutely. And so I was like, okay. So we did it. It was amazing. Unfortunately, the video got lost and we never saw it, but it was awesome. Our second disruption was shortly after. We disrupted the Coach on 555, a disgusting festival that celebrates murdering a certain type of piggy. And that one got pretty wild. They turned the light, like everybody was drinking inside. Employees started hoisting up entire body parts of pigs. They blared the music. They all surrounded us, but we were all safe in the end, and it was definitely worth it. We find that sometimes we're not asked to leave as quickly. And that often happens in Walmarts. Our magic Walmart number seems to be like 18 minutes. But down here in the Southeast, we have Publix stores. Publix is super concerned with their customers, their guests. So they will be much more quick to tell you that they don't want you in there. Walmart, a lot of the time, employees come out of the woodworks just to film, and they don't even tell you to go. So it's kind of interesting. It's and they get to hear it. Hopefully they repost it too. But we found that most of the time, security officers do not hold the power to do anything other than tell you to leave. They have no right to put their hands on you most of the time. And I don't want to speak for every single state and every single place and every single type of store, but the majority of the time they can't. And you tell them the same thing, don't touch me, that's assault. You can tell police officers that too. If you're not being detained, they have no right to put their hands on you either. Police officers will often tell us things just in general to move to different areas, and they're just not very used to being challenged. So a lot of the time they don't even know proper laws. So we try to stand our ground until it seems like I will be arrested if I don't comply, and then I usually listen. But as many of the other speakers have mentioned, you slowly make your way out. Dana mentioned the weave. The bob and weave is one of my favorite tools. And so yeah, I do want to show 2 really quick videos. One is Evan, and let me see here. This was pretty close to when Neiman Marcus ended up going for free, just a little bit before, maybe 2 weeks. Not saying tons and tons of people all over the country. Devin showed us one of her Neiman Marcus disruptions, and all over the world have participated in this. I see Rachel here, huge part of these pressure campaigns. But here's one. This is a smaller disruption because there were only 5 of us total and 1 who was filming. So it looks more like even 4, but here we go.
And non-violence towards all. When I say all, I mean all, both human and non-human beings. Animals have to be anally electrocuted to make the fur coats and other things that you wear. These animals want to live just like
Okay.
what to say to you.
Sorry.
Imagine if you were born as one of them. These animals want to live. Just like us. They're wrong. Not ours. Not ours.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Okay. Is it done sharing? Okay. I'm going to show you one more that's quite different from that one really quickly. Unless I just X'd it out. Was that it? All right. Abby helped me out.
Shannon, are you optimizing audio and video because it was breaking up a little bit?
Was it? Okay. Let's see if this one does better. Thank you. Where is it? Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Their indoor evacuated electrocuted. Have their necks broken. And their skins alive.
The fur industry, which profits entirely off of immense suffering and cruelty, must die once and for all.
Inside, we know this practice is cruel, barbaric, and wrong. No animal is here for us to exploit.
As long as you sell fur, we're going to continue to disrupt your business across this country. There's no excuse for animal abuse. Profit, Neiman Marcus, is not an excuse for animal abuse.
It's not fashion. It's not fashion. It will never be fashion. We have just begun to fight.
All right, so that one was obviously a much bigger group. And you saw Dana Davis, who spoke just before me. She did some awesome speak outs in that. That was actually like a 20-minute disruption, but that was just a portion of it cut down. And it's just like Evan and everybody has said, it is such a powerful form of activism because there's violence happening in these places, whether the place be a restaurant where the body parts and secretions and ovulations of these innocent animals are being served, or a store where their skins and furs are being sold, or whatever it might be, a theme park, a zoo, an aquarium. These are places of violence, and it's violence that's been normalized, and that's why we need to disrupt it, and we need to show people that people do care and that they can join us, and it's not something to be embarrassed of, it's something to be proud of. We've all been taught since we were kids. I think we've all been taught that we should stand up for what's right and to always, stick up for those that are being bullied. And these animals are the most innocent and vulnerable beings on the planet, and they need our help, and they need us to speak up for them and do what we would want someone to do if we were in their place. So that's why we do this. And like Evan mentioned, like the responses to these have been so phenomenal. Devin said some people are going to feel like their day has been ruined. I find that people get angrier in a restaurant than they do in a grocery store. In a grocery store, they're just shopping and it might be annoying to them. In a restaurant, sometimes people are celebrating occasions. But if you're celebrating something, why would you want to do that over somebody's body who suffered so much and was murdered. That shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be a celebration. So and when we talk, we say things that are true. So even though they might be upset right then and there, they are going to think about what we said, and it is going to have some type of an impact on them, especially to see what people are willing to do to speak up for these animals. That resonates with someone. And these disruptions, if you were inside of a place when this happened, this is going to be something you're never going to forget. Like literally, you're never going to forget this. So thank you all so much. Evie, did you want to add anything?
Go vegan, get active, and we're trying to save our world, so join us.
Yay, yay. That was awesome. Thank you, Shannon. And thank you, Evan. It makes me want to, again, lead everybody in a chant. I'm telling you right now, right? Animals do not want to die, just like us. Okay, so absolutely fantastic. And we have lots of questions coming in. So I'm going to put some of the questions out to our panelists now and see what answers we can kind of come up with. But also at the same time, you can continue to put some questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand in a moment or two. But if you have any, where have you disrupted? It would be great to get, you know, some of those listed in our chat as well. What have been for you the disruptions that you have participated in, and maybe which are the ones that are the most memorable, the most successful, or your favorites. So the first question is, you know, to comment on a series of multiple disruptions, like how many is too many, how many is not enough in terms of doing them in sequence in less than a week, in less than a month. Any of our panelists want to take that? Go ahead, Shannon.
I think it really depends on where you are, and you have to feel it out. It could even depend on which officers are on duty that day. And so like some days when we've been in Orlando, we could do disruption after disruption after disruption, and we'll be okay. They've pretty much said, oh, you can go in, it's a public business. Once they ask you to leave, you know, leave, finish up and be on your way. And other days we've been in the same area and the officers have been very aggressive. They've made it clear that if we go into one more business that day, and you know, it's not something to really argue about right then and there. You just figure out something else effective to do. And so I think it just depends. And if you're in somewhere like, gosh, like New York City, San Francisco, when we were in Chicago, as long as, you know, you're not having problems, you could do one after another. Some places there's such a high population that you go right down the road, it's a whole new set of police. The next door down the road is a whole different crew of police officers. So that's a huge factor, I think.
Cool. Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay.
Not really a comment, but I just wanted to pose another question, sort of to parallel and I think I also noticed a question about safety and the possibility of being arrested, and how we as an activist community who are doing disruptions can also make sure that our fellow activists are safe, because we don't know their status. We don't know if they might be put at risk. If some of us might have that luxury and privilege to be a certain way and like express ourselves a certain way, but not everybody is on that exact same platform. So how is there any advice on how we can navigate that, so to speak?
Okay. Yeah. How do we keep each other safe as activists, especially those who might be a little bit more vulnerable to getting arrested?
Yeah, exactly. Like given we don't live in an equitable society, which is why, you know, we're all part of one social justice movement or another. So what's the best way to go about that?
Anybody want to give a thought on that? Devin or Dana? Go ahead, Devin.
Okay. I don't know if this is foolproof. We've gotten we've gotten lucky so far. We haven't had any real issues here, but as an organizer, and I know my other fellow organizers, we obviously always want to keep our activists safe. I would rather go down than one of my activists that joined me, in a disruption. So we do always tell our activists, obviously stick together. And usually we designate one of us, whether it's me, Tiff, or Monty, if the police do show up, to be that point of contact. And we tell our activists, you guys get out as quickly as possible. So if we got held up with police, we'll tell them, before we even go into the store, look, if the police come and we do have to speak with them, you guys leave and I'll be the one to do it. You know what I mean? And then also what helps us is having that meeting point that's not in front of the store. That way, if things do get kind of heavy, everybody leaves and we can kind of get out of there quickly, where we're not just hanging around, waiting for somebody to get in trouble. So, making one of us the point of contact with the police in case we do run into that, and not obviously leaving that up to our activists, and then telling them just to get out as quickly as possible and drive from the spot, has been two things that, we've implemented just to try to keep everybody safe. And then of course, we're always very upfront with people, and we just say, hey, this is always a personal choice. There is, whether the risk might be low, but we can't sit here and tell you that you're, like Shannon had said, you're not going to get arrested. So no hard feelings. We have activists that will come and do our horse protests, and they do cubes with us, but they're not into the disruptions, and that's totally okay. We tell you, there is a small risk. So obviously whatever you're comfortable with, but I think just also being upfront, you're probably not going to get arrested, but there's always a possibility that way people can make that informed decision based off of informed consent.
Yeah, and remember, you can always ask, am I being detained? And they should say no, unless you are for some reason. And once they say no, at least here in the United States, then you can ask, am I free to go? And if they've told you you're not being detained, their next response should be yes. If it's by some chance no, ask them again, am I being detained? So that can be helpful. Dana mentioned earlier, I like to ask for badge numbers. That sometimes deters anything from escalating with officers. But I think if somebody's super nervous, but they still want to be a part of it, they could take a different role. We've had activists who don't wear anything animal rights. They go in ahead of time. They help us scope things out. They can call on the cell phone. Nobody's suspicious of anything unless you put something out publicly. And then they can just be a customer. They can film. I've had ideas where people could stay for a little while. We haven't actually done that, and maybe have conversations, pretend they're well, they're kind of right, and start conversations and things like that. But any customer is more than welcome to take their phone out and start filming when something like this happens, so they can just blend in. And that's a really great way to be a part of something, get some really great footage from a different perspective, and more likely than not, stay out of even being associated with the group, really. So that's a way that people could get involved. But we've done so many disruptions, I can't even count. And we've never had any issue personally. I think the worst that happened was my boyfriend got barred from a mall for a year, but it was worth it. That was one of our Neiman. I think it was the one I showed you with Evan. It was so funny too, because he normally yells and speaks and chants with us, but he was just solely filming that day. Didn't even have a sign, and he was the only one that got barred. It was kind of funny. Like Devin said also, if somebody's willing to be the liaison, or I can usually semi-intentionally, semi-unintentionally take enough attention for myself that pretty much anybody could just walk away and won't even be detected. And because the police are so oh, this one's too much to deal with. But
yeah, I think, dovetailing on that, there was a question about how do you tell public versus private property, and what are the laws around that? And what about freedom of speech? Does that just cover? Does that mean you can say absolutely anything, or are there any exceptions or lines that you cross that ought not be crossed? Anybody want to answer that?
I'll answer that really quick. I feel like with freedom of speech, I feel like you can say what I feel like you just want to get the point across. I personally wouldn't like curse or anything, because I feel like you just want it to look professional. That's just my opinion. And then for property lines, if you go to what's the app called, Landglide, that shows property lines. You can also look on the tax assessor's website. One of my friends here showed me how to work it, and it's a little finicky, but I've printed out property lines before, because if you are on, like, let's say you're at the mall or something, you can't be on the mall property usually. Even if you're like on a sidewalk in front, that's still their property. So I would be aware of property lines. But if you're on public property, there shouldn't be a problem, in my opinion. Yeah.
A lot of the outdoor malls will have differences in the pavers that are laid and things like that. So like, and I've seen this all over. It's not like a guarantee, but a lot of the fancier malls will do that. And that's a lot of the time a way you can tell. Or sometimes the public sidewalk is like a normal, and then there'll be like a brick and a half that's different. But it is great to disrupt, and then until, you know, push the limits a little, and then stay on public property as close by as possible. And that's another opportunity for people who didn't feel comfortable going in. Depending on how secretive you're being beforehand, they could go right at the beginning if you're not being sneaky, or they could just show up while you're inside, or join everybody once you come out. And then they wouldn't have to be even on that small risk. Again, there's always a chance. You never know. Like if an officer could just arrest somebody and then you have to deal with it later. But for the most part, like that would be another great option too. Back to that other question for a second.
Wait, one more thing I'll say about that too is I've been lied to tons of times and told it was public or private property when it wasn't. So I think it's important to know that before you go into it. So you're like, because I have gone into a situation and not done my research before, and they've told me to get off, and then I've just had too much going on and haven't looked it up. But if I look it up ahead, and sometimes I'll print it out and then I can show the cops, then they're like, oh, you're fine, but they will lie to you. So yeah, get that figured out.
You can always ask for a supervisor too.
Okay, did I miss any of the questions in the chat? If I did, please put them in the chat again, or are there any additional questions? Go ahead right now and put them in the chat and I'll read them out. What we have maybe not covered yet. And if not, how about signs? What do you guys recommend about signs? Like, the best signs to bring? What are the best signs for a disruption? Is it different than a regular protest? What signs seem to get the most attention? How do you hide your signs? You know, any tips around that, Devin?
We love to get signs made, like, so for instance, Anti-Fur, if we're doing, you know, YSL or whatever store we're doing, we typically get a couple signs made with the CEO's face on it, which you probably saw in our video. Things that will say like the designer specific. You know, we pick images that are disturbing usually, because that will catch the eye of everybody. And play on their emotions, which we want that as well when we're planting seeds. And then how do you hide signs? We usually bring like really big shopping bags. We'll supply them for our activists, or we'll tell them to bring, you know, their own bags if they have them. Sometimes we get the ones that you can roll up. So really, there's just kind of all different tactics. If you're just barging in the front door, you can kind of bring whatever. Well, we've had banners. We'll hold our bullhorns. But if there's like security and we have to go in as shoppers, then we'll get more creative, and we have our big purses and shopping bags.
Awesome.
One of my favorites was a disruption that I did with PETA of for TAMU's use of dogs for their muscular dystrophy tests. And the dean of the school was being honored in Orlando at a veterinarian type conference. And PETA provided us with these awesome like vinyl signs for that, because we kind of had to like dress up. We had tickets to the event. And so that was like not something that we have funds for our everyday disruptions, but it was really nice to be able to like literally fold it up and then pull it out and open it with no wrinkles or any problems. And those signs are good for a long time too, if they are for a long time campaign.
So if anybody has any resources for, I know PETA is a great resource, of course, for materials and signs, but anybody else put in the chat if you have other resources for places you can make signs, or any tips for materials or places you can order them, you know, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're gonna wrap up fairly soon, you know, but are there any additional questions, or does anybody in our audience want to share kind of a short experience in terms of something you've learned doing a disruption, what you came away with it, you know, you can share as another teachable moment for everybody here. Anybody in our audience want to share a short experience of a disruption that they've had? Or not?
I can.
Amanda. Okay, Amanda, thanks. Go ahead.
Don't mind my frizzy hair. I just got out of the shower, but I'll turn my camera on so you all can see me. So my very first disruption was actually in Chicago with AAM. I think it was a couple of months ago now. I was super nervous. Just so to give everybody a backstory, like I have a security clearance. I work for the government. I'm an Air Force civilian. So I went in with my nerves a wreck, but because I was in with a big group of people who already did their homework and seemed like they knew what they were doing, I was a little more, I don't want to say gullible, because I wasn't gullible, but I was able to do it with a little less fear. We actually went into the Millennium Hotel because they fund the Iditarod dog races in Alaska. So we were asking them to stop, and it was amazing because we went up on this deck and it was all open. And I remember looking down and they had a bar, and there was this guy that was really, like he was clapping like in support of what we're doing. And I think when it comes to like dogs, everybody loves dogs. And so they kind of see those as companion animals. And so it was easy for him to relate to dog races. And just what I took away from that, and I live in a small city, so like we don't have a whole lot of like the Neiman Marcus or YSLs or anything like that. Like I had to go to Chicago to do a YSL protest. And what I took away from that was, you know, as Dana had mentioned and Shannon mentioned, you know, kind of doing your research, having things available. So grateful that I was able to learn from those activists, and glad to be a part of AAM because I am learning so much more. Like I've been an activist for 4 years, and, you know, I learn something new with every demonstration that I go to. And it's phenomenal to be able to stand up for the animals. So thank you for letting me share.
Amanda, that was wonderful. That was just such like a little unsolicited plug for AAM there. It's really exactly why we exist, to take under our wing for more experienced activists, to take less experienced activists under their wing. And we love when people do things for the first time. That's as exciting for us as it is for you. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. There was another question, and this will probably be the last question perhaps before we wrap up, but about spreading the fake blood that we often see that activists will spread fake blood in front of a store, you know, to really illustrate the point of how animals bleed and suffer. Is that destroying property? Has there been any issues with that? Should you or shouldn't you? Where should you or where shouldn't you do that? And also the, what do they call them? You know, the bomb, they go off. I don't even know what they call them at the moment. Any issues with that we should know about? Anybody want to answer that? Shannon, Devin, or Dana? Devin.
As long as, well, in our experience, and it goes back to doing your research, make sure it's public property, and you're on a public sidewalk when you're doing the blood, or else it would be destruction of property. So we've had no issues as long as, you know, it's a public sidewalk, and we do clean up, or we try to afterwards. And I learned that from New York, that you don't want to leave like, you know, your mess there. So we will do the blood as long as it's on a sidewalk. We've done it in front of Saks many times. But we do try to clean up a little bit afterwards. But as far as I know, I mean, we've seen police. I've been at demos where the police are right there, and the streets are bloody, and they don't say a word, and we have left it. So, I mean, we just did this in the Anti-Fur March in New York. Blood was everywhere, and it was a public sidewalk. So there's really, I want to say, nothing they can do. And then the smoke bombs are the same thing. You know, I know in some places the police might say you can't set that off here. There's also some places where they have noise ordinances, or like, you know, you can't use the megaphones too, depending on where you are and what city. So it's always important to just, again, do as much research as you can, and know, you know, where you're going to be protesting, what the laws and the rules are there for those, if you're going to be bringing props like that. But rule of thumb is usually private property. You definitely don't want to be smearing blood anywhere. And you have a lot more restrictions if you're on private property than you do on a public sidewalk. So just know where you're protesting and do your research beforehand.
Yeah, I imagine the blood washes away with the first rain, sort of like the chalking that we do, and nobody ever has an issue with chalking, and it just sort of washes away.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Good tips.
That's not necessarily true. Somebody, I read about somebody that got a felony for chalking on a statue. So don't do anything on like private property like that. I'm just going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I saw someone get in trouble for writing on a wall versus the sidewalk with chalk. You know, they got, you know, the cops were not very happy about that. So there was one sort of last question was, what is sort of the mantra that you guys, or the self-talk, way that you pump yourself up before you go into a disruption? What do you say to keep yourself calm, I guess? What do you repeat? What do you do with your group, perhaps, to get everybody aligned before you enter and enter prepared and intentional? Shannon or Dana or Devin?
Well, so it doesn't happen as often anymore, but it still happens. I get this like incredible anxiety, even though I've done this so many times, and even though I'm like so excited to do them. And it'll be so bad that I'm like, oh my gosh, I might pee my pants, but I never have. But it's that's how bad that anxiety can be until I start. The second I start, done. You know, when I read the question about the mantra, I kind of tried to think like, what's one word? I just kind of think about the animals, but if I had to pick like a word, the name of a sheep that Evan and I helped take care of for her first month on the planet. She lives at a sanctuary a couple hours from us. Her name is Karuna, and that's Sanskrit, and it means action-based compassion. So like, this is what this is. It's action-based compassion. So I don't know. I guess that's one I would pick. Michelle, I did see one other question. I'm gonna send it to you quick in case you didn't see it. But if anybody else wants to answer that.
So this question is, has AAM tried to coordinate disruptions to occur simultaneously at the same stores, but in different towns to draw more attention? So coordinated efforts. Have we done that? We have, I think.
Yeah, we've been working really closely with
that effective. Right.
And helping them to mobilize activists to like try to amplify what they're already doing and try to get more people involved. So especially lately with the fur campaigns, these pressure campaigns have been extremely effective. I mean, some of these companies have been worked on for literally decades, and all of a sudden they're just dropping one after another. And I strongly believe it's because activists are working together and mobilizing, not just throughout the country, but all over the world, if these stores are international. And it's been amazing. Canada Goose, Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, YSL, the list goes on. And I think fur is going to be done soon, and then we'll move on. And yeah, it's been great.
onto feathers and leather, as we say. So any other just sort of final comments from any of our panelists to wrap up? And then I'm going to wrap up with some announcements. Devin.
Yeah, so just quickly on the mantra thing and really what Shannon said, but with anything, with any form of activism, if you're nervous, if you're not sure, whatever it may be, I get anxious too. I get a little bit nervous going in. I've done it. I feel like a million times, but you still have that anxiety until you get started. But just always remember who we're doing it for. Remember the victims. That's who we're doing it for. As long as you keep them in mind, I can guarantee it's going to come a lot easier to you. And one thing I always tell my activists and my favorite line for disruptions is give them hell. Give them hell. And just remember who we're doing it for, and it makes it a lot easier.
I love that. So Devin's mantra is, put that in the chat, give them hell. That's an excellent mantra and a great way to end this, and you know, keeping them in mind. So whatever we might endure as secondhand anxiety because of their experience, it's not even in the same stratosphere as what they are enduring right now at this moment, why we sit here comfortably in our homes. So, you know, it's keeping that in mind. So what an amazing, I hope everybody agrees, what an amazing group of panelists with such varied and really amazing experience. So I want to thank everybody who came tonight. I hope that you learned something. Maybe you want to put in the chat something that you learned, something that you're going to take away, and hopefully you're just feeling inspired and go organize a disruption right away this weekend. And thanks to Panima for working the strings behind the curtain. We have some more upcoming, AAM is always offering workshops. We have some upcoming workshops on Tuesday, November 2nd is communicating with non-vegan family and friends with the one and only author Claire Mann, author of Dystopia. Tuesday, November 9th is a workshop on effective activism during Kippuros, which is a slaughtering ritual around the Jewish holiday, if you don't know, featuring vegan Rabbi Akiv Gersh. And Thursday, November 18th is a workshop on investigating and documenting evidence of animal cruelty in slaughterhouses and live markets and other situations like that. And I'm also looking to put together a workshop that dials in even more deeply on, you know, handling police and handling jail time. So if you know someone, or you yourself might be even a little more of an expert, maybe a vegan lawyer or someone, you can certainly reach out to me if you have something to offer in that regard, and we can consider that. So I appreciate that as well. And if you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee, you've met our mentors here today, or you just want to get more involved, please reach out to any AAM mentor or visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com, and follow both AAM and Farm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Clubhouse. And speaking of YouTube, the recording of this workshop will be uploaded within probably the next 24 to 48 hours. So you can go to our YouTube channel, please subscribe and check that out. Maybe Panima will put all our socials. It's basically Animal Activism Mentorship. Just look us up, and that we're the only Animal Activism Mentorship, so it pops up pretty easily on all of those channels, on all of those platforms. Okay, great. So thank you. Again, special thank you to Devin Kelly, our special guest speaker, and Shannon and Shriya and Dana and Vegan Evan. Thank you, Vegan Evan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
One thing I just remembered for those of you who maybe haven't done this yet but want to get involved, somebody mentioned in the chat about Starbucks, and Starbucks has a policy where they can't kick you out even if you're not buying anything, as long as you're not being disruptive. So it's kind of a good introduction to do a sit-in, because it's like a disruption that they won't even kick you out for. And it's always fun to actually disrupt at the end after you've been there for like an hour or so quietly. But you can tape signs to the tables and chairs you're at and hold them. And it's really a fun way to get started with this. PETA can help with that one.
I love it. Like the beginner's introduction to disruptions. You can just sit and disrupt. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.